My guest today is one of the great spiritual masters of our time. Applauded, celebrated, awarded the Nobel Prize. One of India's great national inspiration. I'm delighted to welcome. Hello and welcome to my series of conversations with men and women whose ideas, vision and philosophy help define our contemporary world. My guest today is one of India's great national icons, a great national resource, a living legend. Any words that I can use to describe his spiritual accomplishments would be inadequate. He's a great yoga master who has taken the discourse and practice of yoga around the world. He's brought to it a renewed vigor, a vitality driven by passion, integrity and personal example. He's taught yoga to the common people, to illustrious people from Jawaharlal Nehru to J. Krishnamurti to Yehudi Menuhin. I'm delighted to welcome B K S Iyengar. Guruji, it's a great honor and a great blessing for me and for this program to have you here. You have so long practiced yoga and you have taught it for 75, 80 years. What has yoga done for you personally?
Personally, it's a mysterious growth in me. So words cannot express, for the simple reason that I was completely a nascent student. I was a backbencher, not knowing anything about anything in this world. How yoga brought me to this level itself is a great mysterious thing for me. From physical health, which was my major importance in the early days, it has now made me to experience my own absolute consciousness, to remain silent, remain active but maintaining that passivity. Whether I'm teaching, whether I'm practicing, whether I'm writing or I'm talking, I am close to my consciousness, and that yoga has given me. And no doubt, if I maintain that absolute state of consciousness, I cannot do anything in this world. It's a 100% passive, quiet life. So I have to come out from that. I said, no, I've experienced that. So let me not live in that elixir of that quietness. Let me build up people so that they also can reach the level of what I've reached through the honest, sincere, devoted, dedicated practice of yoga.
You know, this is the kind of dilemma the Buddha confronted. Under the Bodhi tree, he attained enlightenment and he got, an understanding of the human condition. And then he didn't know what to do. He wondered whether he should go out and teach, whether people would understand him, whether people would respond to his insight and his wisdom. Do you ever feel frustrated?
I'm not frustrated, but I feel that the amount of the wisdom which I got, experience, knowledge which I got, though I impart even to ordinary people, forget about the intellectuals of the world, but even they are finding it difficult to understand the subjective wisdom of the subject. Objectively they can follow because there are expressions, but when I make them to experience, they find it very difficult to accept that such changes do take place in them. So that is the dilemma, but not frustrated at all.
There's a great deal of discussion and writing and research on the relationship between mind and body, and how through the processes of understanding the body, you're able to reach recesses of the mind. I remember, when I had the privilege of meeting you some years ago, that you had said that there were still parts of your body that your consciousness had not reached.
Yes, that was years ago. That was years ago. And these days when I practice, the way in which I practice is not the same as I used to practice in the early days. For example, Today, if you ask me, I can stay even in most difficult position like Kapotasana for 20 minutes, 25 minutes to see moment to moment what type of inner changes takes place. And even though I can stay for 1 hour, Shirshasana, Sarvangasana, even today I stay for half an hour in Sarvangasana, and even a leaf may move by a gentle breeze, but when you see me doing, you never see that I am existing, because there is absolutely no external movement. And what I am studying now is that the presence of mind, the freshness of the mind, which I feel when I start any asana, and I work for it, maintain whether I can keep that same quality of freshness, same quality of the greenness till the end of the position. But I determined that I wanted to stay in this pose today, and let me study what are the changes that takes place in me. I study the entire changes, not only on the external physical level, but also on the conscious and conscientious level, and how the conscientiousness behaves, because which is subtler than the consciousness. So conscientiously I maintain the quietness and stability and that freshness. Even my cells of the body do not show a sign of fatigue. They say, as you like, I stay. And that is what has given me the wisdom of today's practice, that my self is doing, not at all my body. In the early days, my body was the instrument in order to reach this soul. Today the soul is acting as an instrument for me to cover the entire body in a split second, so that it existed very well. And that's
we've often described the journey in a sense as the destination.
Yes, it's a journey. It was a journey in the early days from the periphery towards the core of the being. Today the journey is from the core of the being towards the periphery, so that no part of the whole of the skin is forgotten or not attended by my consciousness.
Yet you are driven by a very powerful sense of altruism, because as you mentioned, that is your impulse to act, because there is always the fear or the risk that traditionally many of our yogis and our practitioners have retreated to the Himalayas and have become, I hate to use the word self-obsessed, but have focused on their own evolution and their own perfection, whereas you have reached out as a teacher with your social work projects and the village that you grew up in. So what is that impulse to altruism?
To be honest, though the Yoga Sutra begins, Ishvara Pranidhanadva, say Bhakti Marga, it starts with Bhakti Marga. But after taking it, I am a real bhaktan of the asanas. So only it was in my mind, as you just now told me about the quoting of Buddha, even Mahatma Gandhi, when you could reach the ultimate through ahimsa, or Satya Harishchandra, who reached only by Satya, I thought, but if it is possible that a leaf of yoga can take such people to that great height, with the people who think that asana is just a physical level and not beyond. So I thought, let me work and find out where it leads me. So I could go beyond the frame of mind, and that breaking of the mind took me for many, many years. And today I don't say that when I am practicing I am doing with the mind, but I am beyond the mind. Though I am speaking today just in your presence by the mind, but actually it is from the heart. So I am close, I have gone beyond the mind. For example, I can give you, we say a camel cannot pass through the needle. This is the example I took it of late, that consciousness is the needle, and the eye of the needle is the intelligence, and the head of the thread is the mind. So the mind's job is only to sharpen and then pierce that thread into the eye of the which is the intelligence. So the moment the mind, our body is like fibers, which is nothing but thread. So I have sewn the thread, the fibers, through the eye of the needle, the consciousness, the intelligence. So I made my intelligence and consciousness to flow to each and every part, like the three rivers, Ganga, Yamuna, Saraswati. So I made my body, I made my mind, I made my intelligence, my consciousness to flow evenly without any deviation in each and every position of what I do.
The point was that you have done this not only for your own evolution, but you have done this in order to teach and serve humanity.
Sir, when I became a teacher, my job was that as a teacher, I should be an example. So as an example, I have to maintain my practices and I have to impart, because today it's very difficult to find a guru or a teacher. It's a rare product. As it has become a rare product, I am fighting my best to see that at least 2 or 3 students can catch and come to the level of what I have reached through this, so that this can be extended, expanded, that even the most unintelligent person, because I was the most unintelligent person when I started yoga, when I could reach this level, so I wanted this to reach the common man, the average intellectual, so that the average intellectual man reaches the level, the zenith in the level of intelligence. And that is why I have already explained to you that I can live quietly for hours together, but it is a passive life. I thought it is not worth it. That's for me. Then I thought that what I experience, this wisdom, how could I impart through the medium of my asana and pranayama, so that they could reach or at least feel and become close to the soul. If they even cannot establish in themselves in the soul, let them come close to the soul.
You know that there are so many yoga teachers now. It is becoming an industry. It is how do I put it? It is becoming instant in the tradition of modern society. You know, weekend course to yoga, 3-day program in pranayam and breathing. So what would you say to an aspirant such as myself? What are the qualities, and how does one look at, I mean, there's only one B K S Iyengar, there's only one Iyengar Institute, you have some students who teach, but what are the qualities that we should look for in a teacher?
First of all, the qualities, we should have 4 pillars to be perfect. The 4 pillars of yoga is Shraddha, Virya, Smriti, Samadhi, Prajna. So these are the 4 pillars. It's faith in what we are doing, vigor to continue, not to drop even a day, and then the memory to find out in order to whether I am evoluting or whether I have stuck into that position. So we have to break the stagnation. So that's why the memory is needed. We have to use the memory only to such an extent, so that whether we are proceeding or whether we are receding or whether in a stagnating position. Then the 4th pillar is awareness. So the awareness, attention is dharana according to me, and awareness is dhyana. So I connect attentive awareness to exist from the bottom skin of the foot to the top skin of the crown of the head, on the right and the east or the north and the west, so that the entire self is one without any deviation or any division. Tato dandva anabhigataha. The effect of asana, according to Patanjali, is to reach that level. And if his word must be true, then I have to be faith, then I have to practice.
You're watching a conversation with the great yoga icon and legend B K S Iyengar. We'll be right back. Have a short break, don't go away.
NFSM से मदद मिली तभी भरपूर फसल हुई तुम्हारे खेतों में।
असली बात है फार्मर्स फील्ड स्कूल जाकर उन्नत खेती के तरीके सीखना।
FFS जानकारी देता है फसल में संतुलित खाद और उत्तम श्रेणी के बीज का प्रयोग और उन्नत खेती के सही तरीके, यानी कम लागत और मेहनत में अधिक पैदावार। NFSM के तहत चल रहे अपने निकट के FFS से आप भी जाने उन्नत खेती की बातें। NFSM की मदद है सच्ची, हर खेत के लिए अच्छी।
Welcome back to continuing conversation with the great yoga icon, master, teacher, B K S Iyengar. So you were talking about the teachers, and the question really was that for a starting out aspirant, what are some of
there are three qualities according to Patanjali. Again, because I am quoting, I am not out of Patanjali's. First is Shakti. There should be a tremendous inner physical prowess that comes under tapas. Then comes Swadhyaya. Swadhyaya is, everybody say, study of the self. I don't want to use that word, but I said you should have the skillfulness, skillful attention in our sadhana, so that the strength, physical strength, is properly, skillfully used to proceed further, so that Shakti and Yukti together makes an individual to reach the state of Bhakti, Ishvara Pranidhana. So these are the three importance. Hence, so one should have physical power, mental power, intellectual power, spiritual power, so that his intelligence and consciousness and conscience surrender to the Antaryamin who lives within.
These days yoga is being used purely as an instrument of physical health, and there is always a risk that cultivates a body consciousness.
No, sir, this is you are right to some extent, but at the same time, Patanjali has used 7 states of awareness, and out of the 7 states of Sapta Pranta Bhumika of Prajna, he says, the first one is physical awareness. So afterwards, do we not have any other health? So there is physical health, there is moral health, there is mental health, there is ethical health, there is intellectual health, there is conscious health, there is conscientious health, there should be divine health. So unless and until all these 7 states of health is achieved, the man is not perfect, he is imperfect. So the idea is that one has to reach these 7 states of health, from the physical to the divine. So that, according to Patanjali, he says there are 7 states of consciousness: wandering consciousness, restraining consciousness, tranquil consciousness, concentrated consciousness, egoistic consciousness, then broken consciousness, Chidra Chitta he calls it, then divine consciousness. So in many cases, when people have reached that state of consciousness, which is my experience having taught lots of intellectuals and spiritual people, this state of ekagrata chitta, ekagrata parinama, what you call it, is like a precipice. One may fall down, one may come up. So this ekagrata chitta leads to ahankara chitta, which is known as nirvana chitta, the pride. The sattvic pride sets in. I have experience, and as you put the word before, so many people think that they have experience, but it is an experience for a split second, but we have to work to maintain that throughout, which many people do not do. So on account of that, they develop Chidra Chitta. So Ekagrata Chitta, if we do not use this concentrated mind, single efforted mind, and directly move towards the divine consciousness, then he is a perfect yogi. Unfortunately, today yoga is commercialized, and it has become a what you call money making business, which pains me, no doubt, and none can become a master in a day. It takes several lives. So parinama goes on changing, so transformation goes on changing. So as long as the transformation does not come to a state of avastha, a stability where there is no further transformation, this sadhana has to continue till then. But unfortunately today, people just take 2 days, they do practices. Now for example, I don't mind taking the name of our Ramdev. He conducts classes 2 days. He sits on a platform, thousands of people are doing it. He does not see one person whether he is doing well or not. But that I cannot do it, because my heart breaks. My heart has to go to my people, And if the people is doing wrong, it's my bounden duty to build up that student who is doing wrong to bring to the correct line.
Not only that, aren't there dangers?
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, sort of physical dangers. You
Now,
could,
physical danger may not appear soon, but there are cases where brain hemorrhages have taken place to whom I am treating, because I am giving them certain asanas so that the blood may seep, not forcing, seep into the brain so that they get back their consciousness. Even Yoga Sutra, if you take Hatha Yoga Pradipika, now they take Bhastrika is an elixir for everything. But the very text says it should not be done by healthy persons. But nobody follows. 300, 400 strokes, they say. What happens to his heart? What happens to the brain? So one has to, yoga is a Jnana Shastra, yoga is a Pragyana Shastra, yoga is a Jnana Shastra. So today we are using that as a Jnana Shastra, not as a Jnana Shastra or Pragyana Shastra. Pragyana Shastra is experiencing wisdom. So when I teach, whatever experience, I have to give that to my students. So if I do not give, if I speak on a scientific level, that means I am objectively presenting as subjectively I am not presenting it. So any teacher who has to reach that level should have this Pragyana Shastra and Vijnana Shastra. Then only I say he's a good. If you ask me, sir, I am staying in Pune for the last 75 years. I am teaching since 75 years. And today's students, many people have passed away, but their children, their grandchildren are still coming to my class. That shows that the righteous and virtuous path is the quality of a teacher. If the teacher is not righteous, not virtuous, just for the sake of name and fame, if anybody works, I say he is not a yogi, he is a propagandist.
I think the other problem is that you have treated yogic knowledge as universal, to be accessible to all and to be used by all, even though your style of approach is branded as Iyengar yoga. Yeah. But we today have a tradition where people are patenting breathing practices or techniques or forms of yoga as theirs, as somehow it was their invention.
Sir, it's a very good question. It's a very, very good question. But no doubt it's very difficult to answer. But we are all, carbon sheets. Our practitioner, or any yogi in the world today, we are carbon sheets. The yogis, the rishis have given this knowledge to us. So the copyright is theirs and not ours. We are just following them. So therefore I said none have their right. So the breath belongs to the cosmic world. The blood circulation, the blood in the body is a cosmic force existing in everyone. So how can it be possible to patent a subject which has been given by our great sages, and it belongs to them. We are just copying them. And what right have we got to patronize which we are copying from the third person? It's a pure imitation of our rishis. Therefore, nobody has the right to patent a subject which is time immemorial given by God.
You've been watching a conversation with the great yoga icon and legend B K S IYENGAR. We'll be back next week at the same time with another edition of a conversation with B K S IYENGAR. Join us then. My guest today is one of the great spiritual masters of our time. Applauded, celebrated, awarded the Nobel Prize. One of India's great national inspiration. I'm delighted to welcome. Good evening and welcome. to my series of conversations with men and women whose ideas, vision and philosophy define our contemporary world. This week we resume our conversation with a great yoga icon and teacher, B K S Iyengar, who has carried the message, the philosophy of Patanjali and our great rishis and the great Indian civilizational heritage to the far corners of the world, led by deep personal integrity and personal example. I'm delighted to welcome back B K S Iyengar. So last week we were talking about yoga teachers and about patenting yoga. You have spoken extensively about the relationship between mind and body and how the practice ultimately leads to bhakti, and bhakti for the divine. In your case, you have been a practitioner or a devotee or a bhakt of Hanumanji. In what way did it lead to a practice of a deity? One would have imagined ordinarily that experience of the divine would be a kind of surrender to a universal divine, to Brahman, but why a particular manifestation?
See, though I am a devotee of Hanuman, but honestly, as I said earlier, I am a bhaktan of the asana. God exists everywhere. If God exists everywhere, He should be existing even on the corner of my nail. Therefore, I have to pay respect when I am practicing that whether the God, the universal force, with the form of individual force, has it reached that area? Has it correctly resting there? Have I found a place for that real soul, the Antaryamin, to be a Atman at that time? So I work in such a way that I expand myself from this source to the extremities of the skin. That is for an individual, this is a cosmic consciousness. Inside is the individual consciousness. So here when I am practicing, the skin, though it is considered as one of the Prakriti, for me outside the skin is the Brahmanda. So skin is the medium between the Brahmanda, external macrocosm, and macrocosm, in interior skin. So I try my level best in practicing this to connect the Brahmanda with Pindanda, or macrocosm with macrocosm, macrocosm with macrocosm, so that there is absolutely no division, even as an individual. So in the same way, when I am teaching, I part myself as if that body belongs to me, and it is my body which I have to take care of. So I treat that way without any division, and that is why I say yoga became popular. As you put me the question today, yoga has become very popular, but nobody knows that when I was invited in 1950s, I was a slave. People called me, the slave is going on the street of London. So a slavish people like me, at that time you should consider how hard it was to present yoga to the Western mind, where I had to follow their way of behavior, mental behavior, not physical behavior, mental behavior. Then how I had to guide them, studying their mental behavior towards the internal mind. What is the internal mind? What is the external mind? How to unite the external mind with the internal mind, so that the internal mind is close to the self, whereas the outer mind is close to the sensual pleasures. So I have to guide them in this way. So I started teaching asanas and making them how to look within, antardrishti. We call it antarraksha. So how to bring the physical eye in contact with the inner body.
But what is the role of the external deity here in your own practice?
I told you God exists everywhere. We cannot divide Him at all. Ishta Devata, according to Yoga Sutra, so one who Swadhyaya brings Ishta Devata to be with him always. So though that is a part of it, but for me, as I just told you, there is absolutely no division for me. But for me, to start with, I have to start with the frame of my mind. So I consider this as my deity. But the moment I enter, that deity disappears. So there is no barrier at all. So my practice goes beyond the barrier of my consciousness. And that's why there is no division.
You know, there is a great emphasis in yoga on the different, the sort of the ladder that you climb from yama, niyama, asana, pranayama. And there is a great tendency in contemporary practice to jump that. And we don't always work, or teachers don't require
Yes, sir.
sufficient grounding and morality.
You are right. You know, today everybody is jumping meditation for peace of mind. Actually, your meditation is not for peace of mind. Peace of mind is needed for meditation. It's quite opposite. And without naitika dharma, without ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, paripurga, without morality, immoral person, how can he experience spirituality? Immoral person is essentially involved. So it cannot reach at all. So this is a dual mind, or you can call it a split personalities. So without naitika dharma, as a bird cannot fly with one wing, the yogic cannot climb the hierarchy of yoga from yama to samadhi, because even beyond samadhi, samadhi is swarupa shunya avastha. You experience a state of non-existence of the self, and that is not samadhi, because Patanjali further goes that he says Purusha Pratishtha, you have to establish the Purusha from the Shunyavastha. So there is a stage above Samadhi. So therefore, like the bird which cannot fly with one wing, any practitioner, aspirant of yoga or aspirant Bhakti Marga, Karma Marga, or whatever the Marga he takes, Naitika Marga is one wing, Adhyatmika Marga is another wing. So Vedika Dharma, Vedika knowledge and morality have to go together, then only he can climb, sir. Otherwise he cannot climb. And secondly, the Patanjali has not said that you have to learn first yama, niyama, asana. Patanjali is a very noble character. When he uses the word ahimsa, satya, steya, brahmacharya, aparigraha, it is which explains the defective intellectual, instinctive qualities of a human being. He is born with himsa, he is born with asatya, he is born with asteya, brahmacharya, parigraha. So these are qualities are hidden, latent. It's in his blood, in his mind, samskara. So in order to break that one, that is why he used the word yama. It's a very interesting word. When Patanjali uses the word yama, he says that if you follow against the qualities of ahimsa, satya, asteya, then he says you are murdering your own self. So you are the yama of your own self. And that is the meaning why the word yama came, as far as my knowledge goes. So without moral practices of building ourselves, that we should be honest, we should be sincere, we should be considering today's condition, as far as possible we have to be non-violent in our behavior pattern, then definitely we can reach. Like a rose which has got various petals. So these 8 petals of yoga are all even, start from the outside to the inside. The center is the Atma. In the rose, as you reach the center from the petals. So also in the practice of yoga, from external karmendriya, so yama controls the karmendriya, niyama controls the gyanendriya, asana controls the snayu, that means nervous system, pranayama stabilizes the breath, pratyahara stabilizes the mind, dharana stabilizes the intelligence, dhyana stabilizes the ahankara, vanquishes the ahankara, samadhi makes you to experience a state of non-existence, and so that you are free from the contact of the stress of the physical or the external and internal, so that you move from samadhi towards the innermost sadhana known as Atma sadhana.
You know, you'd mentioned that what happens after samadhi, that this sort of state of non-self,
yes,
of shunya, sort of like the emptiness of inherent
yes,
existence, can that be sometimes frightening?
For hundreds of people it is. That's why I used the word before, tapas swadhyaya ishwaranidhana, without physical power. without skillful intelligence, the fear is bound to come to him. And that's where they fall. They say, oh, I think I can't take it. So they change. So internal schizophrenics, they are in this as spiritual sadhana.
So I think I'm one of them.
So in spiritual sadhana, you have to be above. So that's why that strength is needed, that willpower is needed. And I gave the 4 pillars of yoga. So with those 4 pillars, it cannot shake the person at all.
You have explained it in very profound terms, and perhaps in a more sort of simple way you could help us understand. For example, there is a great deal of emphasis on pranayama or teachings of through breath by several teachers, and what are the risks of just going straight in to a practice of pranayama?
I think pranayama means people do not know. They have got Panchabhutas, Prithvi, Apu, Tejo, Vayu, Akasha, 5 Tanmatra, Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. And then they have got Karmendriyas, Gyanendriyas, Manas, Buddhi, Ahankar, Chitta. These are all comes under Prakriti. To go beyond these principles of Prakriti is the Atma Tattva. And when we are practicing, when you have asked me about pranavayu, cosmic, this I call it Chaitanya Shakti. Vishwa Chaitanya Shakti is God, Vishwa Chaitanya Shakti is prana. So this Vishwa Chaitanya Shakti is divided when the cosmic air enters into the body. It is divided into 5 parts known as prana, apana, vyana, udana and samana. It is very interesting to know that when we do pranayama, that without power of the samana, one cannot inhale. Without the flow of the apana, you cannot breathe. And even if you breathe, the vyana is expansion. Each has got its own character, which our yogis have divided. So vyana means is connected to the space. Like we have been made up of Panchabhutas, we are made up of 5 sharira, known as Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya. So in between is Tejas Tattva. So Tejas is Manas. Manas balances the 2 gross elements and 2 subtle elements, like the scale of justice. So when we are practicing yoga, we have to be aware of the scale of justice, that we have to balance the 2 gross elements with the power of Tej, fire. So that's why it is called tapas. So to the element of fire, so that the other 2 subtle elements, Vijnana kosha is sparsha and Anandamaya kosha is awareness. So these 2 have to be balanced with the physical prowess and the depth of the inner body, known as heaviness of the water. As the water is heavy, the inner body is heavy. So yogic practice is done in such a way. So Vyana connects to Akashamaya, Udana connects to the Vijnanamaya, Samana connects to the Tejas Tattva, Apana is to Prithvi Tattva, and Prana Vayu Tattva, Ap Tattva. So when we are practicing asana, pranayama, we have to think of these 5 aspects of the breath, how they have to be amalgamated, how they have to be connected to each other. So without, for example, when you inhale, you start with an empty space. That means the Atman, the core of the being, just flashes. Then when you go on inhaling, you are not taking the breath. It is the soul which gives room for the breath to occupy the place inside its body. So pranayama is a bhakti marga, because it takes the breath. As the breath goes in, the Atma expands and comes out. So when you are exhaling, the prana comes out, the Atma goes in. So if we pay this attention carefully, pranayama is a wonderful effect to take a person to directly towards bhakti marga. That is why pranayama is called the hub of yoga. It is exactly in the middle between Bahya and Antaratma sadhana and Bahya sadhana. In between is the pranayama according to Yoga Sutra. So pranayama has to be, when we do it, we have to, for example, I can go still further, that when we are inhaling the breath, we are not taking the breath in, but we are taking the cosmic force inside, and we hold the breath. That is known as Vishnu, who distributes the energy. So Kumbhaka is nothing but distribution of energy in the system. Rechaka is the vicious air which ruins the body. So the exhalation is done in order to throw out the poison which is accumulated in the system. So Shiva Avatara is in exhalation, Vishnu Avatara is in retention, and Puraka is the creation of Brahma. So Brahma, Trimurtis are involved in pranayama. Those who can practice with this idea of Trimurti, Brahma, Vishnu and Ishvara, I say that they are real bhaktas, they are real gods in the world.
You're watching a conversation with the great yogic icon and master B K S IYENGAR. We'll be right back after a short break.
जब रोज रोज राहें जुड़े हर प्यासे को जल मिले जब शाम ढले उजियारा खिले हर गांव गांव संवरता है
बिजली, पानी और सड़कों को गांव-गांव से जोड़कर हो रहा है भारत का निर्माण। भारत निर्माण, चले नई आजादी की ओर।
घनश्याम जी, इसे खाने से पहले जरा अपनी सलामती के बारे में भी तो सोचो। डिब्बे पर इस्तेमाल करने की आखिरी तारीख क्या है, आपने देखी?
अगर रहना है फिट और फाइन तो खरीदारी के समय उसे इस्तेमाल करने की आखिरी तारीख के साथ साथ उसका वजन और कीमत जरूर देखिए। और हाँ, अब हमें इस संदेश को घर घर तक पहुंचाना है। जागो ग्राहक,
आपने हाथ धोए? क्या आपने हाथ धोए? खाना पकाने और खाना खाने से पहले साबुन से अच्छी तरह हाथ धोएं। एक बात और, पीने के पानी में गंदे मैले हाथ ना डालें। डंडीदार लोटा इस्तेमाल करें।
एनएफएसएम से मदद मिली तभी भरपूर फसल हुई तुम्हारे खेतों में।
असली बात है फार्मर्स फील्ड स्कूल जाकर उन्नत खेती के तरीके सीखना।
एफएफएस जानकारी देता है फसल में संतुलित खाद और उत्तम श्रेणी के बीज का प्रयोग और उन्नत खेती के सही तरीके, यानी कम लागत और मेहनत में अधिक पैदावार। एनएफएसएम के तहत चल रहे अपने निकट के एफएफएस से आप भी जाने उन्नत खेती की बातें। एनएफएसएम की मदद है सच्ची, हर खेत के लिए अच्छी।
Welcome back to a continuing conversation with the great yoga master, teacher, philosopher B K S IYENGAR. We've been talking about sort of the role of yoga in personal evolution, personal fulfillment, personal union with the divine. What is the social dimension of yoga? Because in a sense, if we all went inward into this journey of our internal union, society would crumble.
It's a very interesting question, sir. You know, Patanjali also has not forgotten the society. You know, Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upeksha. He speaks of this, Punya, Apunya, Karma, to show indifference towards Punya and Apunya Karma. So here is the one example where he shows what social health is. So a practitioner of yoga, how he has to behave, how he has to behave in the world. He has given the 4 suggestions: Maitri, Karuna, Mudita and Upeksha. Maitri means be friendly, be compassionate when needed, not throughout. Here, because he shows gladness. You know, today everybody, as you said, that everybody wants to reach a higher level. Everybody wants to be on the top in the globe, which is impossible. So there are millions of people who are below our standard, millions of people who are above our standard. So Patanjali says, be glad that you are in a position. If you look, people who are far below you, both in physical body or mental body or moral construction, if you are better, be happy. Those who are better than you, look at them, be happy, and try to struggle so that you also reach them. So this is known as mudita and upeksha. And this is a beautiful word, that even though you have reached the state of self-consciousness, show indifference to that. So this is what Patanjali explains of social well-being. So an individual practitioner of yoga, how he has to mix with the society. And also it has got a hidden meaning. It will be very interesting for people to know that biologically the brain is divided into 4 hemispheres, and the heart also is divided into 4 chambers. Patanjali intellectually and philosophically divides the brain into 4 parts as vitarka, vichara, ananda and asmita, sasmita, prajna. And he divides the 4 chambers of the heart, biological chambers of the heart, into Maitri, Karuna, Mudita and Upeksha.
You have to explain these terms to us.
Which one, sir? Vitarka is brain is an analytical part of the brain. So it is the one which fights with inside, with its own part. Joy and happiness comes, I am contented, the brain speaks of. So synthesis, vichara is synthesis. So analysis, synthesis, bliss and the experience of the true self is the 4 parts of the brain. And this is known as intellectual growth. And then Patanjali comes the emotional intellectual growth. Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upeksha. Maitri, compassion, friendliness, compassion, gladness and indifference at the time when you have to show indifference. So heart is compared, this is the union. The union of the head with the heart is yoga. Indirectly Patanjali explains without saying that it is yoga. Though you speak of Chittavritti Nirodha is yoga, but fortunately if we study, so balancing the 4 hemispheres of the brain, intellectual seats of the brain with the 4 emotional intelligence of the heart, uniting them means he is a divine person according to yoga. So therefore not only this works on the social well-being, but individually also one has to develop the social character in order to serve the society. Therefore yoga for me, or in the other language, this is the Kurukshetra and this is Dharmakshetra. So the battle is going on. Every second the person goes on changing his thought waves, but here it cannot change. So this is the conscience, the seat of the conscience is known as Dharmendriya. So here Dharmendriya lives here Kurukshetra lives there. So union of Kurukshetra with Dharmakshetra is yoga according to Patanjali.
You know, you are such a kindly, generous, benign, warm human being, but yet you have a reputation of being a very stern teacher.
No, you can't call me as a stern teacher. Sir, as I said, honesty is very essential. How can I allow my students and just please them from the top? Wonderful. But instead of that, what mercifulness has some mercilessness. If you come to me, if I have to improve you, if I admonish you, really I am not admonishing you, but admonishing the part which is affecting the mind. So I am strong on that part, and people think that I am like that, but I am an intense practitioner, I am an intense teacher. So it is known as Tivra Samvega. So I belong to quality of that Tivra Samvegan, but it is not aggression. Even yesterday I was telling that when we do the asana, for one of my students who asked me, when we do the asana, you have to balance in such a way that there should be no aggression from the body, there should be no aggression from the self. That means ahimsa and himsa have to be balanced when practicing the asana. Then how can I be a rough student or tell me, sir?
You have introduced in yoga the use of a number of props.
Yes.
as sort of value that you've added to an ancient heritage and tradition. And yet, would Patanjali, you think, have approved of this?
Sir, have you seen Yoga Narasimha in any temple? He has been tied with a cloth round. So for why? So the cloth is tied with Lord Narasimha, so that in order to the cloth keeps the spine erect. So is it not a prop which Lord Narasimha has shown us? So why should we not? It is there. Even Ramanuja has said it. Take a support if you cannot sit erect. Same way he says, tie a cloth and sit erect. So nothing is new. I will give an example. Lord Krishna says, Samankaya Shirabugrivan Dharayan Achalam Sthira. Samankaya. So he gives the center of the body, the head, the ugri throat and the perineum. These are the center parts of the body. So he says Samankaya. So giving the center line, the right and the left of the body should be evenly balanced from the head, crown of the head to the bottom of the perineum. So as such, so how much intelligence one needs, though Samankaya Shivagrivan is a simple word, how much attention one has to pay to bring the right side of the body and the left side of the body in line or in par with the center.
As someone who has reached the higher reaches of consciousness, of samadhi and grasping and touching non-duality and going beyond self, what part of the journey remains for you?
When I have touched that journey, which I have said already, the elixir of life which I have experienced, now as a person who has reached that level, the one which I am experiencing, should I not part with others, sir? So should I be satisfying with myself? Am I practicing yoga just for my satisfaction? I had a motive in the early days. That motivity I have touched. Then what is now left is take that knowledge, what I have experienced, let me give to others, so that let them also experience, so that there is a world where one can experience what we call that golden age, where poise and peace will be more spread and vast than what it is today. Because today we are all centrally pointed to single point of making money, making something like that. But yoga makes one to grow vast, and this vastness makes one, after experiencing, please share this knowledge with others.
Guru, thank you for sharing it with us. It's been a great blessing, a great learning, and I'm deeply honored and deeply grateful.